Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something you've probably never thought about, the surprisingly dramatic 19th century revolution that totally changed how we learn languages. Yeah, I'm talking about a revolution that connects directly to your high school Spanish class and even that app on your phone. So let's get into it.
So just think about it for a second. The last time you tried to learn a new language, what did you do? I bet you were encouraged to speak, right? To listen, to have actual conversations. Well, you might be surprised to hear that's a pretty new idea. For a long, long time, language learning was, well, it was something completely different. And the story of how that changed is pretty wild.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Our story really kicks off in the mid-1800s. Europe was opening up, more travel, more trade, but language education was totally stuck in the past. And this created a huge problem, a real communication crisis.
It was basically a classic case of supply and demand getting way out of whack. You know, in the mid-1800s, everything was dominated by this old-school grammar translation method. But then you get railways, you get steamships, and suddenly people needed to actually talk to each other in different languages. By the time we hit the late 1800s, it was painfully obvious the system was failing. It just wasn't teaching people the practical speaking skills they desperately needed.
And this right here, this really shows you the heart of the conflict. On one side, you've got the old way. Think dusty textbooks, memorizing grammar rules, translating ancient texts, super academic. And on the other side, the new reality. People needed to order food, ask for directions, have real conversations. The gap between what schools were teaching and what people actually needed was just massive.
So, into this huge gap stepped a few, let's say, brilliant individuals. These were the early innovators, the folks who saw a better way to do things. But for a while, they were pretty much working all on their own. We're talking about thinkers like C. Marcel, T. Prendergast, and Francois Gouin. They all had this one truly revolutionary idea. What if we learned a second language the same natural way we learned our first one as a kid? I mean, think about it. Children don't sit around studying grammar tables, right? They listen, they mimic, they use language to get things done in the real world. It was a game-changing insight.
Francois Gouin, especially, had a huge breakthrough, and this quote really nails it. He realized that we learn language best when it's tied to action. We don't learn words in a vacuum. We learn them as part of a story, a sequence of events. He was all about making learning tangible, connecting words to the real world.
And this is his method in action. He called it the Gouin series. It's so clever. Instead of just memorizing the word for door, you learn this entire sequence of simple, related actions. See how each sentence builds on the last one? It creates this incredibly strong connection in your brain between the words and the physical action. It's like you're learning a mini story, not just a vocabulary list. So these ideas are great, right? So why didn't they catch on like wildfire? Well, the simple answer is that these innovators were completely isolated. They were brilliant, for sure, but they were voices in the wilderness. They didn't have the professional networks, no journals, no big conferences, no organizations, to get the word out and turn their awesome ideas into a real, widespread movement.
But that was all about to change. Right around the 1880s, something shifted. All these scattered ideas finally started coming together, building momentum, and becoming a truly organized and powerful international movement.
So what was the secret ingredient? What gave this new movement its power? It was science. Specifically, the brand new discipline of phonetics. Now, this was basically the scientific study of sound. And for the first time, these reformers had scientific proof to back them up. They could say, look, spoken language comes first, not the written word, and here's the science to prove it. It gave them so much credibility.
This scientific approach started attracting a real A-team of language experts from all over Europe. In England, you had the leader of the pack, Henry Sweet. He argued that any good teaching method had to be based on a scientific understanding of how language actually works. No more guesswork. Then, over in Germany, you had the firebrand Wilhelm Vitor. This guy published a pamphlet that basically blew everything up. Its title, Language Teaching Must Start Afresh. He was a huge advocate for training teachers in phonetics so they could, actually pronounce the languages they were supposed to be teaching.
In rounding out our team is Paul Passy in France, who was an absolute genius at bringing people together. The key thing here is that these guys weren't lone wolves anymore. They were respected scholars, and they were building a unified international team to get this done.
And in 1886, they made it official. This is the year it all came together. They founded the International Phonetic Association, the IPA. And this wasn't just some casual club. This was a serious organization with a huge mission to completely transform language teaching all across the globe.
So, what were the new rules of the game? What did this new unified reform movement actually want to change? Well, they laid out a set of core principles that, believe it or not, became the foundation for pretty much all modern language teaching.
And these new rules were a total takedown of the old way of doing things. First and foremost, spoken language is number one, and phonetics, the science of sound, was the key. They said you should hear a language long before you see it written down. They insisted that words have to be taught in a meaningful context, just like Gouin series. And grammar? Forget memorizing rules. The idea was to teach it inductively. Basically, you become a detective, figuring out the rules for yourself from real examples. And finally, a big one, stop translating everything. Try to use the language you're learning as much as humanly possible.
Okay, so why does any of this 19th century history matter to you today? Well, because the ideas these reformers fought for are absolutely everywhere. They created a legacy that directly shapes how you learn languages right now in this century.
Seriously, the principles from this reform movement are literally baked into the DNA of modern language education. That focus on speaking in your classroom, the conversational exercises on the app on your phone, the whole idea of learning in context, it all traces directly back to this revolution from over 100 years ago.
In the end, what they pulled off was this massive shift. They completely flipped the script. As you can see here, they took language learning from this passive, book-focused exercise and turned it into an active, practical skill all about real communication. They made speaking the main event.
So I'll just leave you with this thought. The next time you open up a language app or sit down in a class, look for these 150-year-old ideas. Are you learning through conversation? Are you figuring out grammar from real-world examples? If you are, you're not just using some cool new tech. You are a direct participant in a revolution that started long, long before smartphones were even a dream. Pretty cool, huh?